Hi, I'm Paul Brodie, back in the shop with Mitch on the cameras, and we're working on the backing plate today. I've done this modification other times, and it's a Honda 450 hub, and on the bike it sits like this, and I'm going to rotate it so that it's a better cable angle. And then I want to take off this because I'm not going to use this. Going to drill 3 holes. The holes are going to be a little closer spaced. These are too far apart. And then there's going to be a scoop, an air scoop, and it's going to look something like that to let the air in. So this is the mount which holds the torque arm. There's going to be a piece of metal. This one's a little too big, and it anchors to that and comes up here. I need it to end about, this is going to be the center, about there. So I have to make another piece of cardboard. And then we're going to cut it out of this. And then it gets bolted onto here. There's a couple screws that come in from behind. It gets glued. That's what we're up to today. Thanks for tuning in. First thing we'll do is go to the mill. Oh, I made this. Look, I took a piece of metal, just an offcut, and this is going to go in the vise in the mill. That goes like that. And then I can hold it, because otherwise, very hard to hold. That's going to work. And I took off the brake shoes yesterday and all that. These are seized in there. This is like 1968 or something, so it's quite old. Over 50 years old. Those are seized. I put some WD down there, and I'll get it out eventually. Okay, we'll see you at the mill. What I've done here, I got a spacer block. I got a spirit level in my combination square, and I made this level more or less. And so I'm going to mill this piece off. It's very hard to hacksaw or anything like that, so easiest is in the mill. 1/2 inch end mill, not too big. All right, what I want to show you is, you see here, there's some blue. That's actually Bondo, because I know from past experience that when I mill this piece off, there's always a hole. So in anticipation of the hole, what I did this morning is I took a piece of metal, about 1/16 inch, and I cleaned all this up and I glued it in there, and I filled up the low spot with Bondo, auto body filler. And so it's, when I sand that all down, I'm going to paint this, so you won't see that. It's not going to be polished or anything, because got a lot of things to add on there. So what I'm going to do now is to take off these. I use a little bit of lacquer thinner, and it's just felt pen, red Sharpie. See how easy it comes off with lacquer thinner? And then I'm going to put 3 more holes there, or circles, and that's where the holes will go. And so this part goes pretty smoothly. What's harder to do is the air scoop. And I'm not sure exactly what it's going to look like. I want it to look a little bit like that Norton hub I showed you last video. So this is what I did when I made the other ones. And this is about an inch hole, so I'll use a hole saw. So that was the spacing I used last time, because I haven't reset these calipers. So this is kind of how I eyeball it. Can you see what I'm doing? Sort of like that. And then when you use a felt pen, you can kind of see what it's going to look like. And this will get smoothed down later. I'm not going to do it right now. So it's going to go about like that. So let's go cut those holes. All right, that worked well. I'm going to put this on the bike now because I know the rotation, and then I want to know where the horizontal is from the axle, because I'd like the scoop to be in the middle, not up or down. So we're going to go to the bike. Here's the axle. I machined this section down to 15 millimeters, and then I'll put this together, and then we'll check where the center is. This all turned out quite nicely. So there it is. And it's left-hand thread, right? Who knew that we needed left-hand thread on an axle? Not I. Okay, that looks pretty good. All right, so this is how I want the backing plate to be, because when the rod for the linkage is on, that's that red felt pen line, and that's in line with the slider on the fork. So now it looks like the center is going to be right about there. So looks like it goes right through that hole there. So I'll put a line there. Now we have to figure out how to make the scoop. I don't want the scoop to be up too high, so it looks like it's going to have to come down and under a bit. We'll work on that on the bench. I also machined this down a little bit because there was some pipe wrench marks on it. So it's definitely smoother now. I have to do some CAD now. It's cardboard aided design. It's not computer, it's cardboard. So this is what I had, and it needs to be shorter. So put a hole in there, and I'll come back to here. And that's 7/8 as well, and there's the center right there. And then we'll do something like this. This all gets hidden anyway. So this is the support. This is what holds the torque stay, because that's going to be too low. So we need the torque stay up here. The scoop goes inside. And then after this is on, I've got some sheet metal. I got a larger piece, but that's the thickness. It's 3003, so it bends easily. And then that gets held on. And then we have an air scoop. So that's what that's going to look like. Okay, I got a quick story here. Okay, I got a pair of dividers, and I was working at a machine shop when I was 18. You see that? That is silver soldered right there, and that is carbide. And when I was doing this, one of the machinists, he said to me, oh, he says, you're just wasting your time because it'll never last. Now here it is. It's like 50 years later, and I still haven't broken it. So he was wrong. 50 years later. And it works great because it's really sharp, right? I've never sharpened it ever. Never dropped it on the floor. And it works just fine. Okay. Okay, this is basically what it looks like. And the rod in between these two arms comes down there in line with the felt pen. And it looks like I want this to be up there. So the hole is going to get moved down, and I'll take the bandsaw and I'll cut that around. So we're going to make a change because we can. And that's going to look like that. It all gets hidden anyway, so under the scoop. So that's what that's going to look like. So I make this a little shorter, like that. That's about right. So it's changing as we go, and that's fine because that's often how I work. I see how it's evolving, and then I make a change. All right, what's happening here now is that this arch is basically on here and seated, and I have a big gap. So I have to mill this down now. I have to take metal off of here, something like that. I don't know how much. So that this seats down, and then this is going to hit on the back, and then I have to make an angle so that it matches, and then that gets glued on there, bonded on there. So how much am I going to take off? I'm at about 5/16, a little over 300 thou. And then here, depends where I want it to sit. That's like 7/16, 450. So I think what I'll do is to take off maybe 3/8 of an inch. And then we'll see how it fits. I'm going to have to do some shaping with the Dremel tool. That's where it's hitting, right in there. So this needs to be a little bit of an angle, right like that. So what I need to do is this, like that. You see that? Okay, so it's not hitting. What's hitting now is, can you see that? It's right there. So it's got to be at an angle. So if I were to cut off 1/8 of an inch along the back, that would certainly help. And then I can fine tune later. So it's going to be something like that. And then this will go back to something like that. And take off about 1/8 of an inch. So how do I do that? Good question, right? How do I do that? Or I can do it by hand. I can get my I can get my porting tool out and just take it. It should come off pretty quick. So let me make a mark at 1/8 of an inch. Okay, I got a no, it's not a bastard file, it's a dreadnought file. And I want to make it fit more or less, and then when the video is over I can fine tune it, but I want you to see the process. Okay, so I got a little gap there, and it's hitting, well, it's hitting a lot more here than it is over here. So I need to take off metal from about here to there. That's where the metal needs to come off. It's a process. You keep taking off metal where you need to, and eventually it fits. Right there, right on the corner. Okay, it's not perfect, but it's going to work for right now. So, because it's pretty snug. So we're going to counterbore this down to, if I leave that much there, then the head is going to go into there. And there'll be a little bit on the extra. Oops. Okay, we got a counterbore. Okay, we're gonna mill this at an angle now, and then we're got some sheet metal, and I'm gonna see if I can make up a little air scoop. Okay. So what I want to do is to have this at an angle, and then I want to bend it so that when it comes up to the front of the backing plate, it's not at an angle, it's straight. So it's going to be sort of like that. Makes sense? And then it has to get rounded as well. So it's going to be a little tricky. So I got to bend it around something. What have I got? I can use a file. These with a file, it doesn't slip because it grabs. So something like that. And it needs to be lower as well. So a lot more metal has to come off this. And something I can do later. And I would like it if it matched the radius of the backing plate and stick out just a little bit. Can you see what's going on here? A little bit like that. Okay, so why don't I cut out a piece of metal? We'll go to the bandsaw, and I'll make a couple bends, and you'll kind of get the idea a little bit. Take off the plastic. Okay, so this has to be lower down. There's a bunch more work that has to happen, but you get the idea. That's how that's going to work, and then it gets drilled out more and tapped, 8 millimeters, and there's an insert that's going to go in behind. I got to fill in the gap, and that's where the torque stay goes up to the forks. So that's my project. I think that's it for today. It is lunchtime after all. Thanks for watching. Mitch and I like coffees. Please subscribe, tell your friends, and you take care. We'll see you next time.